Good evening, everybody. My name is Benny Berman, and tonight I'm going to discuss why you should vote for a locally minded politician. So, long ago, when a lord or king was getting ready to go to war, he would call upon his vassals and say, "Hey, I need 500 golden guineas from each of you to fill my coffers so I can pay for our army to go fight somebody." And the lords would either pay up or they would get kicked out. And the lords got their money from taxing their serfs on, whether it was like using a road, a ferry, having a window, didn't matter. They were going to get taxed and they were going to pay for that war. The same thing goes for us today. We just celebrated the 4th of July and we're all patriotic, but it really goes back to the people that started the revolution were mad about taxes. They weren't being represented in Parliament. There was an increased tax to pay for the French Indian Wars that had just happened 15 years before then, and they were being crushed under oppressive taxes that were making it really hard to survive. And that was only like a 3% tax on tea increase, so nothing major to compare to the 12 to 30% of taxes that we pay on our income each year, which, if you think about it, that's a lot of money coming out of your pocket going into the government that isn't yours anymore. And are you really getting the money back that you're paying for? And the answer is no, because what you're paying for is imperialism, the United States to have 750 bases around the world and to control commerce throughout the globe. So to bring it into the United States on how that kind of got started, so after we had won the American Civil War, the tax of 1862 had been in place for 4 years, which was a massive hike. It was one of the first income taxes to be placed on the American population. And then, 2 decades later, it came to be known that the Supreme Court said, you can't have an income tax, we don't need this, we're not fighting a war, we have everything under control, let's take it easy, let's back off. So the Supreme Court backed that up, said it was not legal to charge your population for taxes to support an army that you don't need. Then, in 1913, the government decided, hey, we need to have an income tax, and the first income tax was implemented. It was first at around 15%, and then, in 1916, once it looked like the United States was going to enter into World War I, it was hiked up to 65% of your income, going bye-bye into the pockets of the government to pay for going to war. So if you don't think that you perpetuate a war society, there you are. The American population doesn't need to pay for a war that is ongoing. Both the government and the military-industrial complex are the only ones that benefit. We're just lining the pockets of everybody else and not really paying for getting anything back in return. We still have terrible roads, our education system doesn't match up to most of Western Europe, we have a very faltering healthcare system, and places like Flint, Michigan don't have viable water. So it's hard to say that we're actually giving our money away and getting something in return. And according to the Congressional Library, the government receives $3.1 trillion in revenue from income tax each year. Now, looking at that, when you look at the national budget per year, it says that the military is only supposed to get $500 billion. However, the last couple years, it's received over $700 billion. The funny thing is, when the government takes in all that revenue that it says is going to place towards going to the military, it's actually just using that as leverage to take out more debt, to pay for more things that aren't on the budget. So if you think about it, when you hear on CNN that we're shooting a Tomahawk missile that costs $100,000 and something that we don't need to be shooting at, it really kind of hits home. 2 years ago, I had a friend that was doing maneuvers in the Jordanian desert. He told me that they got to shoot anti-tank missiles at wooden cutouts of tanks. I asked him, how was that? He's like, oh, it was really good. I shot 3 of them. They were $60,000 a piece in practice. Makes you really wonder if your dollars are being spent very well. So, continuing with that, our military doesn't need to be everywhere. It already has plenty of bases just domestically. We don't need to be a force that is looking out to win the war of terrorism. We've been fighting in Afghanistan for going on 18 years, and has anything been solved there? No. On every day in Afghanistan, it costs $4 million per hour to operate. So I don't think that our money is being well spent. We are constantly going through a time of funneling money into operations that we don't need. Now, in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, we pay for more contract workers than we actually have soldiers in the area. And if the trend holds, we're not looking at anything very beneficial. So both the Romans and Frederick the Great had tons of mercenaries they used to solve their problems, win a war, and then they found that when the money ran out, those same people that were helping them quickly turned around and took over the cities and robbed us. And honestly, that's what they're doing. They're creating an issue more and more so they can gain more money. So having said that, we need to look inward and find people that are more motivated to support local and to focus on what Americans need, not necessarily our imperialistic stylings. We don't need to be concerned about necessarily building roads in every other country. It's nice when we have extra money, but that's what NGOs are for, and not what my taxpayer dollars are for, just like yours. Do you really care if there's internet in Kenya? Do you mind that we're building roads in Afghanistan that are really just being used to bring out lithium and not anything else? We're not solving freedom there. So it is imperative that for the next generation we look inwards to bring the United States upwards instead of focusing on outwards and trying to make that reflect in. Thank you very much.